After 7 years of building my video editing business, working with some of the biggest creators online today and generating over $15,000 in just 1 month from video editing, I'm diving into a topic I haven't been so public about. That's the fact that despite 99% of video editors and clients I work with thinking I edit in Premiere Pro as my main software, my real workflow in 90% of the projects I work on is Final Cut Pro and After Effects. And in this video, I have spent the past 30 days working on. I'll give you both beginner and advanced editing strategies that will literally take you from generic edits looking like poo to advanced scroll stopping videos through a few frameworks and techniques we'll be going over in this video. This video will give you the strategies and the systems that you won't find in any other how-to Final Cut Pro video out there online. But I have some news for you. This video is very long and it's packed with everything you'll need to set yourself up for success as a video editor and an editor in Final Cut Pro specifically. But if you can't make it past 5 minutes, then I'm sorry to tell you, you're probably not gonna make it far. So, if you're serious about video editing, this advice could save you years of frustration, missed opportunities, and preventable mistakes. And in the end, you'll leave this video with high-level strategies, techniques, frameworks, and a unique editor's mindset that successful editors and creators, including myself, use to build a solid client foundation and a bulletproof editing workflow. Now, despite what you've been told about which editing software to use and how you need to edit in Premiere Pro in order to be professional, I want to investigate this thought process very briefly. See, this may surprise some people, but my workflow is mostly in Final Cut Pro and After Effects. I do use Premiere Pro very often, as some clients do require certain projects to be in it, especially because certain projects I work with teams, and obviously we all know for Premiere Pro, that's just way better. However, for most projects, I'm going between Final Cut Pro and After Effects. There's a very false narrative out there that Final Cut Pro is a beginner-only software, but what only a few editors actually know is that Final Cut Pro has some more professional features than Premiere Pro actually has. I find Final Cut Pro to be more intuitive, cleaner, and a software that simply provides a better user experience. And that being said, I do still love Premiere Pro dearly. I know some of the guys who work at Adobe, and I believe that they are an amazing software, that they're innovative, and that they're really spearheading AI. That being said, I simply use Final Cut Pro as my main non-linear editing or NLE software, and I use Premiere Pro for when I need to go for a specific client that requires that. I wanted to break any of those limiting beliefs when it comes to Final Cut Pro, knowing that it can be used as a beginner software, but it can also be used as a very advanced one too. Okay. So now that we've broken any limiting beliefs that you might have about the software, despite what you've been told, this first step is the one that is by far one of the most important ones, and yet also the most overlooked. If you're here on this video just to learn how to edit in Final Cut Pro, then skip to this following time code. However, if you're watching this video to learn Final Cut Pro to become a video editor, then this section about editing workflow and systems is extremely helpful and important to you. So when it comes to systems, I use a few things to be an efficient and high-level video editor. The first thing I do is I have an editing checklist that I use for every single video. I also share this checklist with clients so they could see the progress of each video. I also use something called Asana. Asana is a project management software which I also share with each client I work with, and I have it in a board view where I break it up into sections. The video edit and which stage of the edit we're in, and each stage I drag over that project so they can constantly be up to date as what's happening as well. Now, I used to use Notion for this, and you can use Notion. I just find that Asana tends to just be better for certain things, and most clients actually liked Asana better than when I use Notion. Now, another thing I use is Miro or Miro boards. It's basically a mind mapping or a brainstorming software, and you can use it for free on Google. And what I do is I use this to strategize certain story beats. Now, in video editing, and we'll get into this, one of the most important things is understanding how to craft the actual story, how to take charge and be the leader of telling and crafting the story in the best way possible. And to do this, sometimes I create mind maps or brainstorming maps in Miro of all of the main key points of a video and how I'd like for it to play out in which order. Finally, another thing that I use for my systems and workflow is something called frame.io. You can use the free version. I have the paid version because of the amount of clients I'm working with. The free version is free up to 2 gigabytes of download, but essentially what it is when you finish a project, you can export that project into frame.io so the client can watch through and leave time-stamped revisions for you. It's the most efficient way to get revisions as an editor, and clients love it. And what's really cool is with frame.io in Final Cut Pro and Premiere Pro, when you get those revisions, you can import them into your timeline so you can have live revisions in your timeline. Very, very cool feature. If you guys are interested in acquiring all of my systems and workflows in a very cohesive way where you can essentially just download my template, then I will leave a link to that down below. Now, after dialing in your systems and workflow, there's one thing that people completely neglect when working inside of Final Cut Pro, and it's something that should be one of the most important things to you when editing. Now, I know this isn't the sexiest topic, and I don't want to scare any of the beginners away here, so I'll keep this incredibly simple while also keeping it high level and keeping it applicable to both advanced and beginner editors. Now, Final Cut Pro already has an extremely powerful file management system when you understand it correctly. What do I mean by this? Well, Final Cut Pro has set up their file management system in a very, very confusing way. Apple, if you're watching this, please rename your stuff, especially if you're coming from other editing softwares, for example, Premiere Pro. With most editing softwares like Premiere Pro, you open up the app, you click create a new project, you save that project, then inside of that project, you have your timeline, which is the place inside of the software where you actually do the editing, and that's it. Well, in Final Cut Pro, it's a little bit different. When you open it up, Final Cut Pro automatically saves what they call your library to your computer, more specifically in your movies folder. Now, before we go further in Final Cut Pro, I want to clear up the way they name things. So what would be called a project in other editing softwares, in Final Cut Pro, it's called a library. What's called a new timeline or a new sequence in other editing softwares, in Final Cut Pro, it's called a project. This is where it gets confusing. What's called bins, where basically you can organize your footage inside of the software in other softwares. In Final Cut Pro, it's called events. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a document you can download completely for free that breaks this down for you, this folder structure, because it's such a weird way that they name things in Final Cut Pro that you really need this to help you get used to it. So download it for free, and it's my gift to you guys for watching this video. Okay, now that that's out of the way, what we want to do is now open Final Cut Pro. Now, if you have not purchased Final Cut Pro yet, or you've not even downloaded it, you can download it in the App Store. But I highly recommend getting the 90-day free trial that they offer. It's 3 months for free with no strings attached or no limitations. So in that case, what you need to do is you want to go to Google or Safari, type in Final Cut Pro 90-day free trial, and then click on Apple's official Final Cut Pro link, and then click on the prompt that it gives you to actually access that free trial. It's going to then take you to the App Store, but if you just go straight to the App Store without going to that link first, you will have to buy Final Cut Pro instead of downloading the free trial. So once you get that all set up on your computer like you would download any other app through the App Store, now you want to open up Final Cut Pro. Now, as I briefly said earlier, when we open up Final Cut Pro, the software will automatically save the project in your movies folder on your Mac. If you go to your Finder, you should see it in the left sidebar. If you don't see it, then open your Finder window, then go to the top of your screen and click the Go button. Then search Movies folder, and you can find that folder. Then what I do is I drag and drop that Movies folder into your favorites on your Finder. That way it's always easy to access. Now, once we have Final Cut Pro open, what we want to do is come to where the timeline will be. And then we want to click on New Project. Then what we'll do is we'll want to go through and name this project, which I'll let you decide what you want to name it. Now, for in event section and starting time code, just leave those as is. And then for format, I like to keep mine at 4K, but if you want to work with smaller sizes, you could do 1080p Or if you want to, you can choose here what resolution you want in general and whether you want it to be vertical or not. For frame rate, I pretty much always keep it at 23.98 frames per second, or FPS. And for codec, I find the Apple ProRes 422 is the best one. And then everything else basically stays the same, and you could just click OK from there. Once this is done, what you want to do is you want to navigate to your media bin, which is this area in the top left of the screen. The first thing I always do is I delete the smart collections by coming up to it, right-clicking, and then clicking the delete folder. I do this because we just don't need it and we don't want to take up extra space. Then what I'll do is I'll go to the bin, or as Final Cut Pro calls it, the event that has the date on it, and I'll double click and hold, or I'll right click and select rename, and then I'll rename this to A-roll. Then I'll right click inside the media browser area and select new event. You could also click the keyboard shortcut Option plus N as well. Now I'll name this next one B-roll, and then I'll do the same thing for my music, for my sound effects, and for any other assets that I want. Now at this point, you may need some context. So for some quick context, if you aren't sure what A-roll and B-roll is, what you're watching right now, this is A-roll. It's the A, or the main footage. It's the talking head, or the talking head video that's considered A-roll. B-roll is supplementary footage. So imagine I was talking about working out and how to bench press or going to the gym, or how bench pressing is the best chest exercise or whatever. What I would do is I would put or insert a clip of someone doing a bench press, and I would do this to implement a fundamental engagement editing technique and story technique, really, which is show, don't tell. Okay, now we have a bunch of events or bins, and the purpose for doing this is to keep our projects organized, which is crucial. Trust me, by taking the extra 1 minute to set these up and put all of your assets in the right designated bins, it'll speed up your editing exponentially. Now, the next steps to locate your footage, so your A-roll or any B-roll you may have, etc. And keep in mind, some of these assets will grow as your edit grows, because you may come up with, for example, a good idea for B-roll midway through an edit. Then you'll want to search and download that B-roll that you have an idea for from, places online, and then you'll add it into your B-roll bin or folder. So you may not have all of your assets right now before you actually start your project, which is typically normal, so don't stress out. But for now, find what you do have. For most of you, it's likely going to be the A-roll or the talking head or the main talking point of the video. And when you find it, simply just drag and drop it over the specific folder that asset belongs to. So if it's A-roll, what I'll do is I'll drag and drop it from my Finder into the A-roll folder in Final Cut Pro. When we do this, you'll see that when we click that folder, or when we click the drop-down arrow, we can see that we now have that specific clip there where it belongs. So from here, go ahead, pause the video, and add any of the clips you want to add, or any of the assets that you want to add to their designated folder or bin inside of your media browser. Once you have all your assets in the folders that you want them nice and organized, come back to this video. So you've just learned how to create a new project in Final Cut Pro. We learned what everything is called or referred to in Final Cut Pro, which again is super weird for some reason. And you have a document for free where I break down the names of everything and what they're normally named, not to confuse you. We learned about breaking our limiting beliefs when it comes to Final Cut Pro as a professional editing software for editors. And we also learned file management or organization. Now, this next step I'm about to share with you is possibly one of the most important things to do when it comes to being a good video editor. And yet, it is the one people disregard the importance of the most. It's understanding what makes a good video editor and how, keyword here, to properly cut your footage. I have placed many editors into jobs. I have worked on teams with other editors, and I've worked with over 40 YouTubers. I've edited over 500 videos. And with this experience, I've learned what truly makes a good editor and what doesn't. And I've learned that there are specific ways to cut your footage that can make you come off as a complete pro editor instantly. Now, the first thing I want to bring to your attention when it comes to becoming an excellent video editor is understanding something called pacing and flow. You see, pacing and flow is like rhythm in music, but for the way that your video plays through. And as editors, we control this, at least a lot of the time. This is such a basic thing to understand, but so many editors skip these basics. A lot of editors actually suck. Sure, they can create really cool animations, they can, make Iman Ghazi videos or whatever, but they don't have the fundamentals of video editing down. They skip the basics and go straight for what they think makes a good editor. Now, to not make this video 20 hours long, I'm gonna share with you just one of the 5 tips that I have on this topic of what makes a good video editor, and helping you understand pacing and flow. If you want the rest of the tips, then subscribe, because I'm coming out with a video here on YouTube within the next month covering every one of these tips. But the one I want to cover, at least in this video now, is more of a perspective shift more than anything. You see, I've seen far too many editors view a video as a whole, just one long section. Now, due to this, they edit it like it's just one whole video, with no separation. They edit the video with only one song or 2 maximum, and they don't even put any work into editing that music. They turn it down just to where we can hear it, so we know there's a song in the video, but we don't really feel anything because of it. And due to this lazy and wrong perspective of how to actually view and edit a video, we have a lot of editors who are making hardly any money and delivering underperforming videos. Now, what's worked for me and helped me edit videos that have literally, some of them accumulated over 5 million views in less than 30 days for some of my clients that I've edited for or that I've worked with, is by viewing the video as chapters, viewing it as a story or a book that is being played out as a video and needs to be broken into chapters. I watch through the A-roll, and once I finish cutting the first pass, what I do is I look for moments where I can break the video up into chapters. A good YouTube example of this is a video with 5 tips on how to do something, for example. So a video where somebody's breaking down 5 tips. Break that video up tip by tip, making each its own chapter. Now here is where you can make it shine as an editor. For each of these chapters that I find in a video, I give it its own song, its own direction and pacing. And in doing so, the viewer is constantly being re-engaged into the video through your editing. For example, on my YouTube channel, I came out with a video on how to get video editing clients without a portfolio. It's like a 12-minute video or something like that, and I have 12 songs in that video. That means I have a song per minute. And in doing so, the viewer is constantly being re-engaged into the video through your editing. Again, I have a video coming out this month with all of my top tips on how to be a good video editor, so make sure you subscribe. But for now, with just this tip, you'll be starting off ahead of a lot of other editors by viewing a video not as a whole, but by chapters, stories. Now let's talk about how to cut your actual footage and a few really important editing techniques you should be including in your edits. Now, going back into Final Cut Pro, what you'll want to do is navigate to your A-roll folder. You want to select your talking head footage and then just drag and drop it into your timeline. What we want to do now is begin cutting our footage, which essentially means we watch through the whole video and then we delete any silences that are too long, any ums or ands, or any stutters, right? We also want to keep our minds focused on actually paying attention to what the person is saying in the video. Don't just focus on cutting out silences and all that nonsense. Ask yourself questions while editing, like, can I delete this part and have a video that flows better and tells the point more simply? Or ask yourself, can I move this part to a different part of the video to create a story loop with the dialogue or the exposition that's happening? Can I rearrange the A-roll or what's being said in different order to tell a better story? You see, it's these things that make you truly stand out from the crowd as an editor. Things that don't take that much extra work. So before we begin watching through the video, I need to let you in on a few keyboard shortcuts, as this will literally help you massively, especially with saving time. These shortcuts will soon become muscle memory for you, but for now, while they aren't, I recommend pausing the video to get a notepad or open up your notes app so you can have these shortcuts written down next to you while you edit until you memorize them. Now, the basic shortcuts you'll need to know to begin cutting is firstly, how to access the blade tool or the cut tool so you can actually cut a clip. So for this, click on the key B, and when you do, you'll see the blade tool has been activated. To cut, all you need to do is hover over the part of the clip you want to cut and then just click. Then it will make a cut. Now, if you want to delete a silence or a part of the video, you just need to make a cut on each side of the mistake or the silence. And then to get back to your cursor tool, you need to click the keyboard shortcut A. Now, once you do that, you could click to select the part of the clip that you want to delete, and then click the backspace key on your MacBook's keyboard. Now, the next one is using the space bar to play and pause your video. It's the same way that you do when you watch anything on YouTube or Netflix to pause and play your video. Now, those are literally the most basic and essential keyboard shortcuts. But if you want more, here are a few extras that I think are helpful to know. Now, the first one I like to use a lot is the M, the keyboard shortcut M. And basically what this is to do is to leave a marker point over any part of the video that you want. The next one is N, and this is to turn on and off snapping, which is a feature that allows you to magnetically connect clips. Now, I recommend keeping this on. The next one is S. This is to turn on and off the second playhead that allows you to sift through footage faster. Now, if you want to have fun or play around with making your own keyboard shortcuts or customizing them in Final Cut Pro, you can go up to the Final Cut Pro at the top left of your screen, the Final Cut Pro menu, and then go to Command Sets, then Customize, and then just customize them however you'd like. Let's now go over some crucial editing techniques that when understood will help you stand out from the crowd and help your videos have a higher likelihood of going viral. Now, I'm gonna focus on 3 cuts in this video specifically, and those are the J cut, the L cut, and the jump cut. First is the J cut. Now, this is when the audio from the next clip starts playing before the actual video appears. So think of it as a way to lead into a scene. So for example, you might hear someone talking off screen before we actually see them on screen. The J cut's typically it's perfect for creating seamless transitions from clip to clip or building anticipation and also just making a cleaner edit. Now, the next is an L cut, and this is essentially the exact same thing, but just the opposite. With the L cut, it's where the video from the first clip keeps playing while the audio actually transitions to the next clip. Now, the L cut's a great way to make conversations flow more naturally. So if you have 2 people or interviews for like podcasts or something like that within video editing, the L cut's a great technique to use. It's also a great way to connect 2 scenes without like abruptly cutting off the mood. The same as the J cut, right? To do this, just first make sure your dialogue is separated from your A-roll. So what you want to do is you want to right click the clips, all of the clips, and select detach audio. Now, once that's done, you need to hover over the cut in between the clips you just made. And then when this little icon appears, you can move it to the right to create a J cut or to the left to create an L cut. Then there's the jump cut. This one's definitely more noticeable than the J and L cut, and it's used to really show a passage of time or add energy to a part of the video. So essentially, you're cutting out chunks of time from the same shot, which creates a jump in the action. Now, you've probably seen a lot of jump cuts used in vlogs or fast-paced storytelling videos, that kind of thing. It's a staple for keeping things fast-paced and dynamic on YouTube. Now, to do this, all you need to do is cut a bunch of dead space or sentences not needed, and then put it all together. And to add more energy to it, what I like to do is you can actually even zoom in. I do a lot of jump cuts, not by cutting out space, by simply making a cut, and then that second cut, zooming in to about 120%, and then it just adds a little bit more engagement because it makes you feel like we have a second camera angle happening. Now, to do this, make sure you select the clip you want to zoom in on, and then go up to the inspector window at the top right, and then just adjust the scale. It's really easy. So each of these techniques serves a unique purpose, whether you're, enhancing the flow or the pacing or flow of a video or of a conversation with an L cut and J cut, creating suspense or flow with, again, a J cut or L cut, or adding energy with jump cuts, whatever it is. Making sure you nail these techniques will literally take your edits to the next level. Now, at this point, you can pause the video again, and I want you to go through whichever video you're following along and working on and cut your own video until you're finished cutting the A-roll. Try to use these techniques we just learned: the jump cut, the L cut, and the J cut. Okay, now that we have everything we talked about settled, the next step is by far the easiest process, yet most people overcomplicate it way too much. Again, this is something I see so many editors do horribly, and it's simply adding B-roll. Now, when you add B-roll, it's literally the same thing as adding A-roll. You just drag and drop it over the part of the A-roll that you want the B-roll to play over. So I want to go deeper into B-roll itself before we get into doing this. So too many editors listen to what's being said, and then what they do is they go to a stock website to download basic stock footage, and this makes your videos look bad. It makes them feel extremely cheesy, and it just lowers the overall quality of the actual videos. In turn, you're doing yourself or your clients a disservice. Out of what? Out of pure laziness. Now, I'm gonna show you how I find all the B-roll for the videos I work on, if it's not filmed specifically for the video I'm working on. This strategy is one that I use on videos that got millions of views and on videos where clients literally texted me seconds after receiving the video I did for them in just pure awe at what I did with their videos for them. Now, I'll start by saying that this method does take a really long time to do, but I'll show you in a second how I use AI to speed up this process. So what I do is, instead of going to download generic stock footage to put over the client videos, I do research trying to find the B-roll, and I do research trying to find it on YouTube, on news websites, etc. I find real life footage of that thing that I'm looking for, and what this does is it makes each video I edit feel much more produced, more Netflix documentary feeling, much higher quality of production. For example, in this video I edited for Josh Brett, which is well over 1 million views, I went and I sourced clips from other YouTube videos, from Google, from news sites, from social media, etc. But the result was an insanely high quality Netflix documentary style edited video that was incredibly well received. Or in this video that I did for my client Upton, this part he's talking about the tech war between China and between the US. Now, I could have found basic stock footage of the country's flags, or something like that, and it would have been super lame. Or I could have taken the time, like I did, to find online an old news anchor talking about this tech war and then putting this in between scenes, in between his clips. And the result was, firstly, I was able to tell a better story with this, and second, I was able to bring the viewer into the video more by engaging them more and more. And you see, I was able to have B-roll. I was able to show, not tell, in a super high quality, not cheesy way. Recently I've been using ChatGPT to help me speed this process up of researching for these clips. So in the past, what I'd do is I'd spend literally hours researching, sometimes for one 10-second clip. But now what I do is I type in what I want in ChatGPT and I ask it to scan the internet and YouTube and provide me links to what I'm looking for. And sometimes it works wonderfully, and other times it doesn't. And when it doesn't, I just have to bite the bullet and do the research the old-fashioned way. But overall, it's helped me save a lot of time. Now, understanding this next part can take you from being an editor who spends hours and hours doing animations or working on titles to being able to just drag and drop already professional-made assets. Let's talk about plugins. As video editors, our workflow can sometimes feel like it's taking forever, but that's where plugins come in. So what exactly are plugins? Well, plugins are essentially add-ons that you can install into your editing software to help you enhance your process or your functionality, right? They can do everything from creating super cool stylized effects, from transitions, titles, animations, literally all just drag and drop. Think of them as tools that make your life way easier and your edits look way more professional. Now, for example, this title that I'm dragging and dropping on screen would probably take me 40 minutes to create from scratch in After Effects. But here, because I installed this plugin, I can literally just drag and drop and then edit a few of the parameters or settings in the sidebar on the top right in my inspector and have a super cool high quality title animation in seconds. Now, if you're using Final Cut Pro, one of the best places to get high quality plugins is Motion VFX. They offer a huge library of professional grade tools for editors. I've literally tried tons of different plugins and none of them even come close to the quality and ease of use that Motion VFX does. It's literally just drag and drop effects that you can customize, and then it'll save you tons of time and make way better edits. Now, I personally use Motion VFX plugins in almost every single one of my edits. They've literally transformed the way I work. This is not a sponsored video, by the way. I know it sounds like that. I will say though, you can check out Motion VFX using my affiliate link below. It wouldn't cost you anything extra, but what it does do is it helps support me if you do get a plugin through them, through that link. And it helps support this channel so I can keep making content like this for you. So if you're looking to speed up your workflow and take your edits literally just to the next level, definitely explore what plugins can do for you, whether it's with Motion VFX or not. And trust me, once you start using them, you'll wonder how you ever edited without them. Like, you'll be addicted to how much time it saves you. Now, this next part can take you from having basic edits that lack cleanliness and style to having edits that literally blow up online. And that is how to use titles, transitions, effects, and plugins effectively. So let's start with titles. Now, a clean, well-designed title, it can immediately, instantly set the tone for your video. Whether it's bold and dynamic or sleek and professional, your titles, what it needs to do mainly is align with your brand's branding or your client's branding and vibe. So try to keep all your titles legible. I see way too many editors do horrible at this, and don't overdo it with fancy fonts or crazy colors. Again, this is done way too often, and it's done horribly. Remember that simplicity, guys, simplicity often works best with video editing. It's the subtle things that go a long way. Now, when adding titles, all you need to do is go up to the little T icon up here, and this will allow you to show or hide all your titles you have available. Now, no matter the title you want to choose, you can just drag and drop it where you want in the timeline. And then all you need to do is edit the settings or the parameters of that title in the inspector window in the top right, until you have the title in a way that you like it, with colors, with fonts, all that good stuff. Now, next up is transitions. Don't do what a lot of editors do, which is use horrible, cheesy transitions in between every clip. Smooth transitions literally make your edits feel polished and cohesive, and transitions, using the wrong transitions, can completely ruin your video. In fact, some people who use horrible, cheesy transitions, I'll literally click off their video. But here's the thing when it comes to transitions. Remember this, please, please, please. Less is more. Stick to the subtle transitions, high quality transitions, or just simple cuts for professional work, right? Save that flashy, crazy transition stuff for the fun creative projects where they really make more sense. So for me, I don't use any built-in transitions in Final Cut Pro. The ones I do use when I use transitions are ones from Motion VFX or ones that I made in After Effects. Now, a couple go-to transitions for me are the light flickers, and honestly, that's really it. Like, I don't use any other transitions. Any other transitions I only use for specific creative situations that come up. I really don't like to use transitions too often. In Final Cut Pro, you can find your effects and transitions in your top right side of your timeline. There are two icons, square and a square icon, and a transition icon. And by selecting these, a new side window will pop up where you can go through your transitions and you can go through your effects, which leads me into effects. So effects are really like the seasoning, I guess, in your edit. They can really enhance your content when used thoughtfully and properly. But again, same main principle here. Go easy, less is more. I know when you start editing, you get excited with all these effects and you just go way too hard, but a good effect should complement the story. It shouldn't just be there to be there. It should not distract from the edit. You know, very subtle motion design or effects or even blur, it can all add depth and emotion to your scenes, but when used right. So essentially the concept is the same as the titles when it actually comes to editing it. So Final Cut Pro makes this part of editing very, very easy. So you can basically just drag and drop any effect over or onto the clip you want to add it to, and then just adjust the effect to your liking and taste in the inspector window. But please remember, less is more. So by combining all these elements strategically, and focusing on less is more, you can create edits that are not just clean and stylish, but also memorable and impactful, and make videos that go viral. So take the time to experiment and learn how to use each of these tools and how they can serve your unique style or your client's unique style. On the topic of style though, this next point can take your videos from looking like this to looking like this. Now I'm about to show you how to color grade, both with and without plugins. Before we go any further though, I want to preface this with the fact that for the past 2 years, I've only used Motion VFX plugin M-Film Look to color grade all my footage. In fact, even when I edit in Premiere Pro, at the end, I'll export my footage inside of Final Cut Pro just so I could use M-Film Look. So let's first assume that you don't have M-Film Look, and let's color grade only using the tools that come with Final Cut Pro. I'm gonna walk you through how to color grade, or how to color correct, and how to color grade with and without plugins. So when we have our clip that we wanna color grade inside of Final Cut Pro, and we don't wanna use plugins, what we wanna do is we wanna come up here to the color tab up here in the inspector. When we do this, we have, first of all, a new feature in Final Cut Pro called Enhance Light and Color. If we click on this, it'll essentially automatically use AI to color grade this for us. Now, obviously we could tell that it didn't do a good job. Usually AI with color stuff does not do a good job. So I'm gonna click Command Z to go back. I like to not use this here. I mean, if you want, you can increase exposure here, which we might do a little bit. You know, just go through. Color grading is very stylistic. So what you want to do is you really want to do what you feel is best for you and the client based off the style they want. Bring down the shadows a little bit, maybe pop the saturation up. No, I don't want to do that. You know, I'm just going around and playing with the sliders a little bit, which is essentially what you want to do. But something I always do, fundamentally speaking, is I come here to where it says color adjustments, this drop down, and I come over here to color curves. And then what I do is this first Luma curve, I come here and I click and just drag ever so slightly down. And I do the same thing up here, but up. And what this does is create a slight S curve in the graph. And typically speaking, when you do this and you turn it off and turn it on, it just adds a little bit more depth and contrast and stuff to your video. In this case, I think that this was color graded as it was sent to me. I think it already had a first passive color grading. So right now it might look a little bit too aggressive. And now when you click this drop down, you have a few other things here. You have the color board, you have color wheels where you can control the color of your shadows, your highlights, your mid-tones, and you have some sliders to go with that. You also have the hue and saturation curves. So you can control basically this blue in the background, for example. If I go, I can click this dropper here and I can hover over the color blue and click, and it'll automatically create 3 points here on the slider, and I can drag that up or down to completely change the color of that. So that's how you can change the color of things, is with the hue / saturation curves part. But if I go back to my effects, what I'll see is I'll see all of the adjustments I made here. So if you ever want to deactivate anything, all you need to do is come here and click this checkbox, and it will undo any of the color grading that we just did. Now that's color correcting. Color grading is really when you add style to it, and you do this through LUTs. LUTs are essentially what they're called is lookup tables. When abbreviated, it's called LUTs. And essentially, think about like the old days of Instagram when you used to post a photo or something, you could choose a filter, like a color filter. It's essentially, that's what a LUT is, but professional grade and for video. So what you want to do for that is you want to come over to your effects browser and come here to the search icon and search custom LUT. And when you do that, you'll see this, just drag and drop that on top of your clip. And then you can come up here to your inspector, and where it says custom LUT, come over here and click show. And then what you have here is you have LUT, convert, input, output, mix, etc. Right? So what we want to do is we come up here to none. I already have pre-installed LUTs. It's very easy to install a LUT, but again, I don't want to make this video like 10 hours long. So I highly recommend you YouTube how to install a LUT in the Final Cut Pro. It'll take you like a minute to watch. But for the sake of this tutorial, I want to really focus on teaching you how to actually grade. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over to LUT. Now I have a favorite LUT that I like, but you can also download a lot of LUTs for free. Just type in free LUTs on YouTube or free LUTs on Google, and you can have a bunch of ones that you could download for free. What I like to do is use this LUT here, and I like to turn down the mix, which is like the intensity, to like 50-ish, sometimes a little bit lower. And you can see what a LUT just did is it really stylized the video. It like changed the style or the grade of the video. And that's what color grading is. That's the difference between color grading and color correcting. Usually my color grading and color correcting process, or just overall color grading process, is very simple. It's what you just saw. I come in here, I quickly adjust any of the colors very briefly. I very quickly adjust, exposure, shadows, contrast, that kind of stuff very, very quickly. And again, subtlety is the master with video editing. So I keep it very light, very subtle. You see, I didn't go aggressive with any sliders. And then another thing I do is I always add a nice LUT, whether it's this LUT I'm using or another LUT. And I usually turn the intensity down, because when the intensity is set to 100, it's always way too aggressive on any LUT. I usually keep it around 50 or lower. And I usually like the way I usually click that on and off. But right now, honestly, the way this clip was sent to me, I really like it how it is. So I'm going to keep it how it is. But that's how you do it. Okay, now let's show you how to color grade with the greatest color grading plugin, in my opinion, that exists today. And that is M-Film Look. The only plugin that comes close to this, in my opinion, is Red Giant's M Colorista. That's one that I use at times, but I still doesn't do everything that Motion VFX does. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to color grade. So I'm gonna delete all of this and I'm gonna show you how to actually color grade with a plugin. Now I always use Motion VFX. There's two things you need to do this plugin, or to do this workflow. The first thing you need is called M Adjustment Layer, and you can get that completely for free on Motion VFX. What you want to do is you want to drag and drop it on top of your clip, and all of the color grading is going to happen in this adjustment layer. We do this for a couple reasons. One, so that we can just drag and drop our color grade onto the entire video and not have to go through and do every single clip individually. And the second reason we do this is to have almost a safety net. So imagine something happens with our color grade, or something disconnects or anything happens, a million issues can arise. It's on this adjustment layer and not on our clip, so that we have that safety. We could just delete the adjustment layer and start over. Now, the second thing you'll need is something called M-Film Look, and it's this right here. It's this plugin from Motion VFX. It's incredible. What you're going to want to do is drag and drop it onto your adjustment layer. Then you will have this pop-up come up in your inspector. This is amazing. You have so many cool parameters here, but I'm only going to cover what I use most, which is basically the levels. You can come here and adjust your exposure, contrast, and all that. Again, I like this, so I'm not going to do that. But the thing that I always do, my secret sauce, is one, my camera battery just died, so now you're going to be only looking at my screen. But essentially what I do is first, I just do a LUT. So I always come here and I add a LUT. Now, what's cool about M-Film Look is you don't have to go and install LUTs yourself. They already have a bunch of LUTs built in, pro LUTs built in. Now, I installed some of my favorite ones, so I'm going to use that favorite one that I like before. Another favorite of mine is this one, so I might use this one right here. It's called Basic right here. Okay, yeah, that one looks good. Turn it down to about 50. That looks really nice. Then what I'll do is I'll come down to this thing called lens blur. And what happens is when I select this and I turn the intensity up, if I come over here and select it, you could see that it created a mask. And this mask is essentially everything inside of it is clear and sharp and in focus, and everything outside of this circle is blurry. And it gives this really cool depth of field, really professional, high quality look to all your videos. So much so that I have clients and editors always asking me, like literally every week in my inbox, dude, how did you do this like blur color grade effect thing? This is it right here. This is the secret sauce. It's this right here, lens blur from M-Film Look. You can also add grain. You can add a vignette. You can do a letterbox to make it look cinematic. You can do a aberration, which is essentially like the blur. But what happens with the aberration, I'll turn the intensity up so you could really see. Pay attention to like the corners and the sides of the video. It really gives like this RGB kind of like separation feel. I use that sometimes as well. But really, you see that my color grading process takes like 3 to 5 minutes with M-Film Look, just because I literally do the same thing for every client. Like most of the time, I only do this. I come here, LUT, put my LUT in, aberration, lens blur, boom, looks perfect. And that's how I do it. Now that we know how to color grade our videos, we need to talk about something serious for a second. Something that can take your videos from 0 to hero when implemented correctly. That is the art of stylizing. Okay, so what in the world does stylizing your videos even mean? Well, it's adding small and subtle assets to your videos to bring more life to your edits. For example, things like stylistic overlays, putting on, glow effects on your titles or things like that, or even the fonts and the colors that you choose. All of this goes into stylistic choices, right? I mean, I can go on forever. That being said, let's break this down into a couple parts. So First, where to find stylistic assets such as overlays, glows, etc., and then how to add them into your actual videos. Okay, so first, where do you find them, right? Now, you can download a lot of these plugins from sites like Motion VFX, and then when you do that, you can basically have all of these assets just live inside of your Final Cut Pro software, which is super convenient, and it's the way I prefer to do it. Or you can sign up for something like Motion Array, Storyblocks, or something like that, which is another tool I use frequently, where you can specifically download templates, stylized titles, and a myriad of other assets. Now, second is how to add them, right? So let's take overlays as an example. If you use Motion VFX overlays, that's simple. You just drag and drop them into your timeline, and then you just edit them with the parameters in the inspector. But if you're using something like Motion Array, then what you need to do is you need to find what you want from Motion Array, then download the assets or the overlays you want. Then you need to make sure you're keeping up on your file management, guys. Remember this. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna place this in the folder that you've already created in your folder management workflow. For me, I like to put it in miscellaneous. And then from there, we'll drag and drop it into our bin in Final Cut Pro. Then from our bin, we'll drag and drop it once again above our clip. And as you can see, a lot of times with overlays specifically, it'll be set with a black background. So what you wanna do is listen up, because this is where things get really hard. No, I'm kidding. It's not hard at all. Now what you wanna do is really just change the blending mode, right? So change it to screen mode, and then you're all set. You now have a stylized clip with a beautiful overlay. What I like to do is usually turn down the opacity when I do that. That's just a stylistic choice. Again, the reason I'm not getting in such detail on how to actually like go inside and do this in the software is because a lot of this stuff is very, especially on the point of style, it's very like personal preference, right? Everything under the stylistic point really falls under that umbrella as well. So I don't want to tell you how to do it a specific way. I just really want to show you the how to do it and then let you go off and stylize things the way you think best. Now, this concept is the same for most other stylistic assets you use in videos, as I just mentioned. Now, I like to use a few things. I like to, of course, use stylistic things like overlays, transitions, and more, but what I love to do is play around with like built-in things like glow effects or, you know, unique little things like that. Like the glow effect in Final Cut Pro is really good, and see what cool things, I try to see what cool things I can do with that and try to stand out, right? So for example, a lot of time whenever I have animations or titles on screen or something, I tend to put an ever so subtle glow on top of it to add a little bit more life to things. And you can do this the same way you do with any other effect or title in Final Cut Pro. You just drag and drop it and then edit the parameters in the inspector. Now, despite what you've been told about what is the most important part of editing, we're about to dive in what is at least 50% of the most important part of a video. That is the audio of the video. Too many people, too many editors neglect this part of the editing process. And in effect, you have a poorly performing edit or video. You need to remember that the audio is 50% of the edit, and a study was even done on this, and the results were pretty shocking. I don't know how legit this study is, I'm gonna be real with you, but essentially what I've heard is they've tested and saw that more people stopped watching a video that had bad video and good audio instead of good video but bad audio. Meaning that to those people, majority of people, audio is more important than the video. On that note, let's talk about editing music and how to find music properly. Now, first off, there are two places I go to find music, and they are the two places I have ever needed, since they literally have the greatest music selection of all time, in my opinion, for editors. Now, I'm gonna leave the links to everything below, like all the documents, all the downloadables, all the links to everything are gonna be in the description. Now, these two places is Epidemic Sound and Artlist. Yes, they are both paid subscriptions, but they do have a free trial. So if you are on a budget, just get the free trial. Now for this video, let's use Epidemic Sound as an example. Now when I open up Epidemic Sound, the first thing I do, very first thing, is I look on the home page to see if anything under the recommended or under staff picks is actually good, and the vibe is what I'm looking for. Typically, I sometimes find music just on the homepage and it takes a few minutes. But when I can't find good music on the homepage, I either go into their pre-made categories, which are amazing, or I search specific genres or moods. And I spend as much time that's needed to find the right song, because the right song and the wrong song can make the difference so big that it could mean people literally clicking off your video. So let's say you found your song. Once you've downloaded the song from Epidemic Sound, then put that song into your folder structure, remember file management, and then drag and drop it into your Final Cut Pro bin labeled music. Typically, in editing, we never want to use a full song. We want to change songs frequently to keep viewer retention high. That being said, what you don't want to do is cut a song and then just fade it out. You don't want to do that either. That's some rookie work right there, right? That's some rookie work, my friends. What we want to do is cut up the best part of the song and align the songs and the beats to the places you want them. And then you could even add a transition between two cuts of the songs to help it fade into each other a little bit better by clicking the keyboard shortcut Command T to create a transition between the two. But when it's time to end the song, the way to always 100% of the time make it feel like it ends perfectly, like it ends so well, like it was meant to end there, is to add an echo or a reverb effect so that the song rings or echoes out. Now to do this, it's so simple. All you need to do is go to the very end of the clip of the song with your playhead, then click your left arrow on your keyboard and hit Shift H. What will happen is you will extend your last frame of the clip or the song out. Now go to your effects tab or your effects browser and type in Cathedral. Then drag and drop that audio effect onto your song. When that's done, click your left arrow key one more frame, and then the playhead will move. You'll see it move one frame to the left. Then bring the Cathedral slider down to 0 in your inspector window. Then make sure that you hit the little diamond icon to the right of the slider, which is also known as a keyframe. And this will activate that keyframe. Then go one frame to the right with that right arrow key, then bring that slider up to 100%. Then play it back, and you will have a super cool echo out effect. Now, we all know that music isn't the only track that needs a little bit of love on the timeline. We can't neglect sound effects. Now, when it comes to sound effects, you can find them the exact same way that you can with songs. But let's talk a little bit about the art of being subtle. Now, a lot of editors have that I've either interviewed, that I've had do test edits, or that I've worked with or trained, a lot of them were horrible at adding sound effects. They would add a sound effect that either had nothing to do with what was going on. For example, I once hired an editor. There was a title that came on screen, and they put a sound effect of a hawk, like the bird. It made zero sense. So they either add a sound effect that has nothing to do with what's going on, or they add it and they make it way too loud. Guys, the key with sound effects is to help emphasize the things happening on screen in a subtle way. Such a subtle way that the viewer shouldn't even realize that there are sound effects, but they would notice it if it wasn't there as well, right? Because if it wasn't there, it would feel empty. You see, the best editing is invisible, which is why right now I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, so I just wanted to briefly break down a YouTube video that I put out that did pretty well, and the sound effects, and pay attention to how I use sound effects, right? How I'm very subtle with it, and how the sound effects, when watching it, you can't really tell that they're there, but if you watch it without the sound effects there, you would notice that it would feel empty. Let's just watch this intro. So you want to be a video editor, but you're struggling to land your first paid client. Well, listen, after 7 years of building my video editing business, okay, so the music's one thing, right? We already talked about music, and you could see that I used 2 songs in just the first 7 seconds. That's because I liked the intro of this song, and I liked the body of this song. That being said, we're talking about sound effects here. Now, I really wanted, when I went in from my intro, talking head intro, into my B-roll, I really wanted there to be a hit. And there was a hit here in the music. You could see the waveforms. If you look at this waveform right here, you could see that there is a hit in the music. The problem is it wasn't a big enough hit. So if I deactivate the sound effects and the dialogue and I play this, you'll see that there is a hit. It's just not a big one. Right? So what I wanted to do is I wanted to add a hit. So I just brought a sound effect, a deep hit sound effect, and then you could see, pay attention to how much more depth this adds into that hit. That, my friends, is the power of sound effects. Now, before, I wanted to almost like make it as engaging as possible with sound. So I even wanted to add something like a riser. So if we completely get rid of every track and only play the riser, this is what it sounds like. Now, the reason I did the riser is because it adds tension, and then I release that tension with the hit. So when I put those two sound effects together, it sounds like this. Add in the music. Add in the dialogue. So you want to be a video editor, but you're struggling to land your first paid client. Well, listen, after 7 years of building my video, and that, my friends, is why sound effects are important. I think that's enough said. I mean, you could see right there, this goes on throughout the entire video, but this is what I think about when I use sound effects, right? I think about how I can add to the atmosphere of the video. How can I add more depth to the video with sound effects? Okay, now that we know the importance of sound design, I'm gonna show you how you can actually keep clients on retainer forever, as long as you implement the steps I'm about to share. Even if you're working on your own videos for YouTube, these are the best steps to follow. See, when you're editing a video, it's easy to get so deep into the process that you miss the small mistakes or overlook areas that can be improved. That's why following a solid workflow and implementing best practices is essential to delivering high quality edits consistently. So on that note, here's some critical practices to adopt as an editor. One is something I like to call the quality pass. So think of the quality pass as your final safety check. So after you completed your edit, what you want to do is you want to set aside some time to make sure you review the video from start to finish without stopping. Just look for issues. Take a notepad and look for any issues you find, right? Things that are common issues with editors are like audio syncing problems, jump cuts that feel super unnatural, accidentally, misplaced transitions or effects, unaligned or missing media is another one, color inconsistencies. These are a lot of main things that you want to keep in mind, but I can go on forever. But anyways, the goal is to experience the video the way your audience will. And what you want to do is make notes of anything that stands out. Even small details matter here. Something I want to say here is don't be lazy. If you catch a mistake, fix it, even if it takes a few more minutes, because it's your reputation on the line. It's also, if a mistake after delivering a video or posting a video, it's not just embarrassing, but it can also damage your reputation as an editor or as a creator. Now, a pro tip that I've learned is to step away from the project if you have the time to do it for an hour or even overnight before doing your quality pass, because fresh eyes can catch details that you'd probably otherwise miss. I get it though, sometimes we're on tight deadlines, you just don't have that luxury. Now, the second thing to always do is get third-party review. No matter how experienced you are, a second opinion can work wonders. For me, it's always my wife, but ask someone else, preferably someone who matches your target audience or has an eye for detail to watch your edit and give honest feedback. They'll often notice things that you didn't, like awkward pacing, weird visuals or confusing visuals that just make no sense, or even weird technical glitches. There's a few things to look for though in a person that you are having as a reviewer. Now, the first one is to have someone who isn't afraid to critique you constructively. So that's why I use my wife, because she's not afraid to, let me have it. If she thinks it, she's an artist and a designer like herself. She's a creative person. So she's ruthless on me when it comes to, in a loving way, when it comes to those kind of things in an edit. But that's exactly what I need, and that's what you need too. Somebody who loves you and that doesn't mean it in a bad way, but is telling you because they want you to have a successful project. That's the first thing you should look for. But I also don't only have my wife. I also have a very small select group of peers in my industry. So other high-level editors who are editing for big creators, I sometimes, if it's an important project to me, I send it off to them, and we have a small little group where we do that. If you'd like me to start a group completely for free where we could have something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. But anyways, another thing to look for in a reviewer is a person who understands your project's goal, but also isn't super familiar with it, if that makes sense. And also another thing, even if you don't agree with all their feedback, it's valuable to hear what others interpret the first time they see your work. Because remember, you're editing for your audience, not just for yourself. So another pro tip I kind of have here is try to create a simple checklist or set of questions to guide your reviewer kind of through the video. So for example, were there any moments that felt too slow or too rushed? Was the story or message clear? Did the audios and visual quality kind of meet your expectations? And then by implementing these best practices, what will happen for you as a creator and as an editor is you'll create a smoother editing process. You'll have great practices and habits as an editor, and you'll deliver videos that just wow your audience every single time. It might take some time to build these habits. It might be excruciatingly time consuming and painful in the beginning, but the payoff in quality, in pay, in subscribers, and your reputation is going to be well worth it. But here's the thing though. All of this information is utterly useless if you don't know how to export your video out, right? So how to save your video or export your video. I'm just going to hop into my screen and show you exactly how to do this so we can get this perfectly right.
So once you have your project fully done, you'll notice that you might have these dots all above your timeline, as you could see here. And this basically means that your project needs to be rendered. So your project basically needs to take some time and load before it sends off, before we export the final product. Now to do this, there's a couple ways to do this. One, if you go to Final Cut Pro at the top left of your computer and you go to settings, there is a feature here called playback background render. I usually keep this turned off because if it's turned on, it takes up a lot of space on your computer. But yours is probably automatically turned on. If that's the case, then you won't see these dots probably. Your video will automatically be rendering. What background rendering means is that Final Cut Pro is rendering or loading your footage as you're editing it, but it takes up a lot of space, so I keep this turned off and I do it at the end. Now, if it did not render and you do have these dots up top, what you want to do is you want to come up to Modify and then come down to Render All and then select that. You'll see a progress bar comes up and you'll see that it begins rendering. And when that gets to 100%, all of these dots on top will be gone, which means your timeline is ready to be exported or ready to be saved. Now, when that's the case, all you want to do is come up to the top right. There's an export or a share icon. Click on that and come to Export File Default. And when you click on that, you'll be greeted with this here. What you want to first do is go to Settings. You want to choose Computer, because if you don't, you could see the file sizes are ridiculous. So come over here to Computer and then come over to, for video codec, choose Better. It will take slightly longer to export your video, but it'll export out in a better quality. And then choose the resolution that you shot in. So most things nowadays is 4K. So come to 3840 by 2160 for 4K. And then you'll see that this video that I'm rendering out is like an hour and a half long. So this is a big file size, but for you, it should only be 1 to 5 gigabytes probably. And then all you do is you click Next, and then you come down here to the dropdown and you choose where you want to save it. Now we have folder structure for this stuff. So if you go to your folder structure, go find your video, and then you'll see under exports, we have version 1, version 2, version 3. This is version 1. So we'll want to name it. So for me, this is Final Cut Pro for Beginners _V1. And I'm going to save it in version 1. I'm going to click Save. And then when I do that, you'll see that it begins loading up here the same way that it did. It's just preparing media. And when that's done, the same way that we saw the loading icon for rendering, it will be the same thing for sharing. And then when this is done, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to go to your folder under exports and you'll be able to see your final video.
So that's exactly the A to Z on how you can edit a masterpiece inside of Final Cut Pro. But there's something that I didn't tell you at the start of this video. It's mainly for those of you who want to make a living out of video editing. Everything I just told you is completely useless to you financially if you don't know how to actually start a business and make money editing. So if that's you, click on this video right here if you want to learn exactly how you can start an editing business. Or if you want to know how, after all my years of experience, I would start editing again if I had to start over today, then you can click on this video over here. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know below if you have any questions, and I hope I've provided so much value to you with the resources here, and I hope I provided so much value to you with the content here. And I want you to know I'm rooting for you.